With Baratza's new release of the Encore ESP, they now have a few grinders out there that are dedicated for espresso for the home consumer, one of which is the Sette 30. So which one of these grinders is best for you? Let's find out. Hello, my name is Stephen Holm and I'm with HomeGrounds, a place for you to go to learn more about brewing and enjoying better quality coffee right at home. And today we're comparing the Baratza Encore ESP with the Baratza Sette 30. Now a quick word on transparency right up front. Baratza sent this grinder to me a couple months ago when they were announcing it because they just wanted me to try it out, check it out. If I wanted to make a video, I was welcome to, and I have just released a full video review on this grinder that you can check out. And also, this grinder, the Sette 30, I had to reach out to them because I knew I wanted to compare these two grinders to one another. And I said, hey, would you guys happen to have a Sette 30 that I could borrow just to make for this video? And they sent me this one as well. It's just, I love Baratza. They've always had great customer support. I've used their grinders and recommended them highly in the past, and they just so happen to send me both of these grinders. Thank you, Baratza. Now let's test these grinders. So I'm comparing these two because they're the two entry-level espresso-focused grinders that Baratza now has for the home user. Along with these two, there's also the original Baratza Encore and then the Virtuoso Plus, which fall in sort of the same price ranges. The original Encore is a little bit cheaper than both of these, but isn't espresso focused. So although some people are able to grind for espresso, you don't really have much adjustability in that range. And then the Virtuoso Plus falls in between the price ranges of these two, and it is not designed for espresso. So you're going to be able to get better tasting espresso and adjustability out of these two grinders. Now the new Encore ESP is $200 and the Sette 30 is $300. So these are two grinders at a great price point designed for espresso. Now today I will only be comparing these as espresso grinders. They can both technically grind for drip, but they are espresso focused, so we're not really going to be worrying about any drip settings. I'll mention them at points throughout the video, but mostly we are focusing on espresso. So now let's hop right into talking about the grind quality, which is perhaps the most important thing to look for in an espresso grinder. So now some technical details that we're going to get pretty nerdy, so feel free to skip past this section. There will be timestamps down below. But these grinders perform extremely similarly in the espresso range, like very similarly. I'm going to throw some graphs up on the screen, but before I do, let me quickly explain them. I talk about this a lot in my videos, but I do a lot of particle distribution graphs. So what that means is taking each grind setting along these grinders. In this case, I did them at 12 different points throughout the grind settings and seeing how these grinders are producing as far as particle sizes. So ideally we will have a bell curve where most of the grinds are at a certain size and then they fall off from there. And so I graphed those out, and in this case I took the average particle size at each setting and graphed them alongside each other. So now I'm going to throw up the Encore ESP graph, and as you can see in the settings from 0 to 20 we have a very good espresso range, and then from there it jumps up into the drip range. Now I will throw on top of that the Sette 30, and you can see that these grinders are extremely similar, at least in that 0 to 20 range. And then on top of that, we can look at what I call the deviation graphs. So that is at each grind setting, how spread out are those particle sizes. And once again, in the espresso range for these grinders, they are pretty much exactly the same. So hypothetically, these grinders should perform pretty much the same when we're pulling shots of espresso. So now I'm going to pull some shots of espresso. In this, we're going to be looking at a few things. First, I'm just going to be able to show you sort of the workflow and usability when we're dialing in espresso, because that's a huge thing, is that you want a grinder that just flows really well. You don't have a lot of extra steps, and that just feels comfortable when you're making an espresso. So we're going to start with the ESP. I'm going to dial in a coffee and we will go from there. Now, as you can see there, the workflow with the ESP is pretty good. You just can weigh into this dosing cup, pour it in, grind into there and right into your portafilter. So that's really nice for single dosing. You can also fill this hopper and dose out for each grinds, but you're gonna have to turn the grinder on and then stop it and guess or kind of eyeball how much coffee you need, or if you want to weigh it out every time. But it really is optimized for single dosing for espresso. All right, so that shot ran pretty fast. We had a 20-gram dose, 40-gram yield in about 21 seconds, and we are at setting 13 on the grinder. So I'm going to back that up about 3 clicks to setting 10, and we'll see how that does. That one also ran a little bit fast, so we're gonna back up even more down to setting 8, and hopefully that should be about 30 seconds. There we go, that was about 28 seconds. That is at setting 8 on the ESP, so we still have quite a bit of room to go finer or coarser depending on the coffee and how we want to dial in. I'll give this a quick taste, tell you some quick thoughts, but then we'll dial in the same coffee on the Sette, and then I'll be able to directly compare the two. So pretty typical results that I would be used to with the ESP espresso. It is very syrupy, very rich, a lot of sweet fruit notes coming through, not a super clarity focused espresso, but definitely a lot of depth and a lot of body. Very, very nice. So let's move on to the Sette. Now right away, one difference that you will notice with these two grinders is, well, not only how they look and the size, but also the ESP comes with that dosing cup, so you can dose right into there, go from there into your portafilter. The only cup included with the Sette is this big one, which isn't really ideal for espresso. So you can do two things. You can either find a dosing cup online, they're pretty easy to find. In this case, I'll probably just use this one, or these forks here on the Sette you can actually take and rotate, and they are meant to hold a portafilter then. So you'll just take your portafilter. It's not going to hold it for you, but you would have to hold it under here, and you can dose directly into there. So actually, I'll try that first before we go into using a dosing cup, just so I can show you. Now, if you are unfamiliar with this grinder, one of the biggest differences is something that you are about to hear. It is very loud. So this is on setting 11 on the Sette. Pull a shot, see how it goes. So magically on my first try, we got a 40-gram yield in 28 seconds. So the exact same parameters as the ESP. I will say just from that one shot, I don't love holding the portafilter over there. It's not really steady on these things. So I would really recommend, if you're looking at this grinder, get a dosing cup. Yeah, so pretty much what I expected. The coffees that these two grinders are producing are extremely similar. I'm having a hard time noticing any difference whatsoever. If they're dialed into the same grind setting and same parameters and everything, the coffees taste pretty much identical, which is a good thing. Now, as far as the workflow differences between them, obviously they will function a little bit differently. One thing I didn't point out about the Sette is that it does actually have an auto timer on here. So you can set that to be however many seconds, and that'll stop grinding after that many seconds. So that's really nice if you like to fill your hopper and then have it grind out the exact amount of coffee, same thing every time. And then you don't have to worry about weighing out your dose every time. I prefer single dosing, so weighing out my coffee, dumping it in the grinder, and only grinding that amount. But if you prefer either one, then that may sway your opinion either way. So now the final question, looking at these two grinders, which one is best? And I think there's a couple different things that we could look for that will determine our answer. First off, I will say that if you are someone who is looking for an espresso focused grinder, but also has the ability to do drip brewing, so say you have friends over on the weekends, you like to brew a big cup of Chemex, but usually you are making espresso, I would highly recommend the Encore ESP. It is focused for espresso, but it also has those larger grind settings that you can do bigger batches. Now the Sette 30, we didn't really talk about drip brewing at all in this video because it's not the focus of it, but the Sette 30 only goes up to about 1,000 microns at its coarsest setting, which that is maybe about enough to do a single cup of pour over coffee, but without much adjustability there. So I do not think that this grinder is great for drip brewing. If you're planning on using it to grind coffee to brew for a big batch of drip, do not count on this grinder. However, if we are only looking at espresso and that is the only factor, then the Sette has a little bit of a lead there because we have 30 settings that are pretty much spanning the same length as the 20 settings in the ESP. However, that is coming with a slightly less preferred workflow because of these forks and the large cup there. And then also it is extremely loud. So if you are someone who lives in a house with more than yourself and those other people in your house are asleep at a time when you like to make coffee, do not get this grinder. So to conclude this video, when we're comparing these two grinders for espresso, I think Baratza knocked it out of the park with the Encore ESP. It has those 20 micro settings that you can adjust for espresso. I've had no issues dialing in a coffee with this, and I think it has enough adjustability for most people. The Sette 30 is a great grinder. It's a great espresso grinder. We have a lot of range and adjustability in there. However, it does have a few flaws that I think make the Encore ESP a winner out of these two grinders if you are looking for a new grinder for your home. If you have any additional questions or comments, concerns, anything, let me know in the comments down below. I'm here to help you. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and until next time, happy brewing.